So, to understand how evil spirit possesses self with its dark feminine nature of fear and fearing loss is pretty simple and easy. Close your eyes and take a deep breath in. And keep your eyes closed. Think of your first love. Think of your first love. It was probably puppy love when you were 16 like it was for me, but I was 14 for you. And think how overwhelming that love was and how beautiful it made you feel. How full it made you feel. And complete that first love made you feel for the other person. And now think of that other person with those same feelings. How they themselves became full of that spiritual fullness and love as a result of you. And it's very safe to do this when both people, you know that both of you have the same emotional love and fullness for each other. Now think of expressing that love to that person, of how you deeply feel, and it's safe to, because that other person has those same feelings. And imagine thought, just give me a little bit of room and just think that way for a second. Now think, as I said, about expressing that, and it's completely safe to do so. So go ahead in your thought, in your heart, express in words what is in your heart, to an accepting, loving face waiting for you to say that, in your deepest emotional self, spiritual self. That's the God Spirit in you, giving you life, the life of love, the life of emotion, the life of truth that recognizes love in self and love for other people. Now think. Take a deep breath. It's pretty heavy. Now think of expressing to that same person without that person having the same feelings for you, where you have to take that risk. It's right there. The heart becomes filled with fear of rejection from that person. You're about to be vulnerable, the most vulnerable you can, and just bear everything in hopes the other person acknowledges those feelings. But that person probably didn't when you did express that. Most of us go through that rejection thing of our first love. And that fear of rejection comes from early childhood programming, naturally expressing through the single element of the human will of your child that you used to be, and then was rejected for it, and that spiritual trauma that took place afterwards, because that is spiritual trauma. It's the conversion technique of evil, because a child's knowledgeless, doesn't know what to do with those hurt feelings and hurt emotions, especially when that rejection is coming from caregiver, mom or dad, or somebody the child needs to trust. And when mom or dad or caregiver then rejects the child's completely alone with that spiritual traumatic pain that stays with self throughout life, living through that fear of rejection. That's how evil possesses self, spiritually, in influence. To remain afraid and lust-ridden, like I just showed you, is the self, keeping the self in darkness of the natural light of God's Spirit that feeds us light, truth, and knowledge. Light in logic, giving us, from his masculine thought, giving us the ability, then through intellect, his son, and spiritual element that gives to us the ability to further truth's knowledge, and through emotional wisdom, further the knowledge of love that we can have for ourselves, for truth itself, which is the self, and then for other people. But if we're stuck in fear and lust, then we're doing all kinds of dark and evil things. A normal person who doesn't like evil will still be evil when in lust. And that's the sad part, because a person doesn't even know how evil the self is getting. Has a good idea, like an inclination, I guess you call it, but doesn't really know the depth of darkness itself is getting itself into as the result of feeding from fear instead of feeding from truth. And of course, we all know how lust and fear can turn into supreme evil in this world. We see it all the time. But for the normal people who aren't completely evil, who want to know the difference, like you and I, we want to know the difference between our dark side and our light side, to be good people. And we are good people, always have been. There is not one child born bad, not one single one. The experience of conversion gives us lust, that gives us behavior, that makes us bad. And that's not fair, but it's the way it is. So to kill the power of evil through its feminine element of fear and darkness is to speak the truth of it. Say, yes, I'm afraid of that. Or yes, I love this, or I hate this. I feel joy in my heart when I see the innocence of a child. And then that alleviates the fear. Not only that, we program ourselves cognitively when we hear ourselves speak. So the more we hear ourselves speak, expressing reality and truth in the self, it becomes a program of thought process, and then it becomes easy. Take it from me, I know that, because I've lived in a lifetime of fear and complete silence. I wouldn't express nothing. Then I started practicing, and it's become easier. Not that I'm perfect at it, because I get scared lots still. Even with the amount of self-study that I have completed for myself, and taking risks. That's the thing, taking the risk of expression that eventually will kill off the power that fear has in the heart, and where lust can't be then developed or born or created as the result, however you want to say that. So lust won't even be in the picture once self begins to learn how to risk expression, speaking the inner truth, the inner movement. It's beautiful here. It's loving here. It's fullness. And when you take risks and speak truth and work through your moment in truth, because you speak it and express it, there's then all that to deal with at the expression inside human relationships. And you do that, and you come to your balance. I become content and then full. The spiritual fullness takes the place of fear again, just like it was in early childhood. The child eventually expresses it immediately becomes spiritual fullness of the Father's pleroma.